We're surrounded by these incredible pieces of engineering that we walk past every single day without even a second thought. Today, we're going to look at one of the most common and probably most overlooked of them all, the compressed air tank. It's an object that stores an immense amount of energy, and believe me, it demands our respect.
Come on, you know that sound. That rhythmic chugging of an air compressor firing up in a garage or a workshop, and then that satisfying hiss of release. We've all heard it, but have you ever stopped to think about what's actually going on inside that simple-looking steel cylinder? What is it even for? And why is it so important? Okay, let's dive in. So the official name is a compressed air receiver. And at its core, it's a pressure vessel. It's got one job: to take the air all around us, just normal atmospheric air, and hold onto it after it's been squeezed down to a much, much higher pressure. We're talking anywhere from 6 to 15 times the normal pressure for a typical workshop, and for some special jobs, way, way higher than that. Now, here's the best way to think about it. An air receiver is basically a battery, but instead of storing electricity, it stores potential energy in the form of pressurized air. What this does is it creates a ready-to-use buffer of power, which smooths out the supply from the compressor so your tools get a really nice, steady, consistent flow of energy to work with. So how does the air get in there? Well, first, regular old air gets sucked into a compressor. As it gets squeezed, its pressure and temperature just shoot up. That hot, and now pretty moist air, is then cooled down. As it cools, it's fed into the receiver tank for storage. A pressure switch then acts like a gatekeeper, controlling when the air is released to your tools. And that last step, step 6, the drain valve, pay very close attention to that one. It's absolutely critical, and we're going to see why in just a minute. All right, so where do we actually find these tanks? You might just think they're for workshops, but nope, they are absolutely everywhere, and often in situations where lives are on the line. From your local garage to the front lines of emergency services, this technology is a real silent workhorse. And this really shows the different scales we're talking about. Your standard industrial tank, that sits at around 10 bar or 10 times atmospheric pressure. But a firefighter's breathing cylinder or a scuba tank, whoa, that's holding air that's been compressed to a staggering 200 to 300 bar. That is an immense amount of pressure. And then you've got railway reservoirs. If that tank fails, the train loses its brakes. The stakes can be incredibly, incredibly high. And the list just goes on and on. I mean, the next time you're at the dentist, listen for that compressor that powers the drill. Hospitals rely on them for medical air systems that run ventilators. They're in submarines, pushing water out of ballast tanks so they can surface. They're even in airplanes, powering the landing gear. In every single one of these jobs, they are the unsung hero of modern industry and infrastructure. But with all that stored energy, there's always a risk. And the biggest threat isn't actually the pressure itself. It's something much more common, something that gets inside the tank as a totally natural byproduct of just doing its job. The real enemy is water. So here's a fact that shocks most people. When you compress air, the moisture that's naturally in it gets squeezed out. In a busy workshop, several liters of water can condense and just collect at the bottom of the air tank. Every single day. That's right, liters of water pulled right out of thin air. And what happens if that water isn't drained? Well, it creates the absolute perfect environment for corrosion. Now, this isn't rust you can just see on the outside. This is a hidden threat. The tank can look perfectly fine. Maybe it's freshly painted, looks structurally sound from a quick look, but inside, that water is slowly, silently eating away at the steel, making the walls thinner and weaker year after year. And the consequence of that hidden damage is terrifying. A catastrophic rupture can happen with absolutely no warning. All that stored energy is released in an instant, turning the steel tank into shrapnel. We're talking fragments that can travel over 100 meters at lethal speeds. This isn't a slow leak. It is a violent, devastating explosion. Okay, so that's the risk. But here's the good news. It's a risk that is almost entirely preventable. Taming this silent pressure really just comes down to following some simple, non-negotiable rules for safety. It's all about diligent maintenance and just having respect for the energy you're dealing with. So what's the most crucial takeaway here? Drain the water every single day. It is the single most important thing you can possibly do to prevent that internal corrosion. Beyond that, you've got to test the pressure relief valve regularly. That's your final safety net if something goes wrong. And never, ever, ever exceed the maximum pressure rating that's stamped right on the tank.
These simple checks, when you do them regularly, are what stand between safe operation and total disaster.
Now, let's finish up with a little piece of history that shows just how transformative this humble tank really is. We need to go back to the 1800s, when traveling by train was a huge gamble, mostly because of one massive problem: stopping. See, before 1868, stopping a train meant crew members had to literally run from car to car, manually turning a big brake wheel on each one. It was slow, it was unreliable, and it was incredibly dangerous. Then, an inventor named George Westinghouse had this revolutionary idea. What if you put a compressed air receiver on every single train car and linked them all together? This invention changed everything. It allowed the entire train's brakes to be applied all at once, and crucially, it made them fail-safe. The brakes would apply automatically if a car broke away. The simple, reliable power stored in these tanks is literally what made modern railways possible, and, more importantly, what made them safe. So the big takeaway is this: the compressed air receiver is humble, it's cylindrical, and it's usually just painted some boring color and stuck in the corner of a workshop. But it is a serious piece of pressure equipment that stores enough energy to be lethal if it is neglected. The key is just a little respect and daily draining. That kind of raises a question, doesn't it? What other everyday objects are actually sophisticated pressure vessels just hiding in plain sight? Well, on our next explainer, we're going to find out. We're going to take a close look at that familiar orange bottle in your kitchen or sitting next to the barbecue, the LPG gas cylinder. See you then.